Welcome to the new immigration debate, Workers Coming Together for Equal Rights. Today we have a very special program. We'll be announcing the May 1st March for Equal Rights. So stay tuned, we'll hear more of the specifics on that later in the show. My name is Tosh Anderson. I'm with Break the Chains Alliance, which is a national alliance of community and grassroots organizations who came together to fight for the rights of workers and communities whose voice was not being heard in the immigration debates over the last few years, and to offer solutions to the divisions within our communities. I'm joined here today by Nellie Baily from the Harlem Tenants Council, as well as Josephine Lee from the Justice Will Be Served campaign. So in the past, positions on the left and the right on immigration reform have failed to address the growing crisis, the growing divisions between workers and among workers. Saying immigration reform is only going to affect undocumented workers has marginalized the issue and basically told documented workers, workers with papers, workers who are citizens, that this is not their issue. What we're saying is that in order to bring people together, in order to end the criminalization of undocumented workers, all workers have to come together and see how these laws, these immigration laws, have impacted all of us. How this criminalization has, in fact, led to deteriorating conditions in our workplaces and in our communities for all American workers and U.S. workers and undocumented workers. So, what we're seeing is today a looming recession. Working families are in debt. Some of us, certainly in your community, Nellie, are unemployed, chronic unemployment, but we are working longer hours for less money. These are U.S. workers we're talking about. And what we want to talk about today here is how these conditions are connected to our immigration laws. So, what are the immigration laws we're talking about? We're talking about the repeal, we're talking about the Employers Sanctions Law, which is a law from 1986 that sanctioned employers for knowingly hiring undocumented workers. What that law has in fact done is given total control to employers over undocumented workers and incentivized employers to want to hire, to prefer undocumented workers, leading to their slave-like conditions, but also increasingly more and more American workers working side by side in these same conditions. So with that, we want to hear from folks in the community how these immigration laws are affecting our communities and limiting the organizing that we can do in our communities. So with that, maybe I'll start with you, Josephine. If you can tell us a little bit about how the employer sanctions law and the criminalization of undocumented workers is affecting your community, but also how the criminalization of undocumented workers has really wreaked havoc in that community.
Well, the Justice Will Be Served campaign, it is a tri-state area campaign, and now we're seeing more and more workers from the service sector, including nail salon workers, including delivery workers, supermarket, from different communities who are standing up. We see a lot of the sweatshop conditions are growing increasingly common, that the labor law has become a joke in many workplaces because the boss just ignores it, and the labor law has become almost impossible to enforce. And now we see more and more people stand up against it. They want to fight. They no longer want to tolerate the sweatshop conditions. But then when they come together, then they find that they're not able to fight. And why is that? Right now what we're seeing is that at every turn when we're organizing, we face a roadblock, and that roadblock is the Employer Sanctions Law. Basically, as this modern day slave law, it criminalizes a whole group of workers. They become the underclass, and then everyone else is forced to compete with this underclass in order to try to survive. And so the boss can easily say to one worker, a documented worker, if you don't like this dollar an hour job, then I can easily hire another undocumented worker, and you're out of luck. And so that's why we're seeing that these kind of conditions, like $1 an hour, $2 an hour kind of jobs, are not only faced by undocumented, but also by documented immigrant workers as well, who are forced to accept these kind of conditions. And now, because what happens is that this law gives all the power to the boss. The boss can choose when and how to enforce the immigration law, so that when workers start coming together and organizing, or when they start to unionize, then the boss will say, I want to see your papers now, or they'll selectively use the law, because the boss is the only one who knows who has papers and who doesn't have papers. And in a sense, they become above and beyond the law itself by becoming the enforcers of the labor law and of the immigration law. And one example that we have in our campaign, in a restaurant called East Buffet in Long Island, these group of workers came and unionized. They fought against the boss. The Department of Labor went in, the National Labor Relations Board went to investigate twice, enacting a decision against the boss. The workers spoke out and reported to IRS that the boss was not paying their taxes, that they had cheated the government, cheated the workers, and still the boss continues to get away with this because they have essentially used employer sanctions law to enlarge this shadow economy. And so they're able to get away with all these violations, with cheating the government, with cheating the workers, and become above and beyond the law, because the government has institutionalized criminalization of a whole group of workers. And now, actually at this restaurant, the restaurant said that the National Labor Relations Board has issued a decision against them. And when workers went back, the boss said, I can't take you back, you don't have papers. And so the group of documented workers who went back started to unionize the people who were there. But then one by one, the documented workers as well were fired. And the boss has been able to use this law to really attack their unionizing campaign. So we've really seen how the employer sanctions law has weakened the unions, weakened organizing amongst workers, and weakened the labor movement. And we're right now coming together to say that we need a real solution to all these problems, that this is enough. I mean, I think even the AFL-CIO has come out and said that we need to repeal employer sanctions. In 1986, they said that they were for it, and even after more than 20 years, they say now they're against it. Why is it that the government, both Republican and Democrats alike, are still pushing for this? It's a puzzle to me why they're still pushing for it, even after we've seen the devastating effect it's had on both immigrant workers and native-born American workers.